Let's look back at the greatest American authors of our time. We got Lewis Carroll or Nathaniel Hawthorne or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And then you got Jerry Siegel along with his partner Joe Shuster. And yes, I will be comparing those two men to the likes of H.G. Wells and Lewis Carroll and Miguel de Cervantes and William Shakespeare. Mostly because Superman will be in the public domain in 8 years. I wish, and it's this era that I wish to focus on. So, this is what I've talked about this book before, the avant-garde of future civilization. And what made this important was their very famous zine, like a magazine, but a zine, Reign of the Superman, made in 1933. Herbert S. Fine, also Jerry Siegel's anonymous name, his alter ego there. And this was dealing with, like a prototype of Ultra Humanite and Lex Luthor getting powers. And it was very much a Twilight Zone story, very one and done. And along with this were the other works of Jerry Siegel. Now, these were not great or fantastic, but this is the stuff that he wrote in his youth. When, he was as young as a YouTuber is now, just trying to, what a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer trying to sort it out. Or a TikToker, If 20-year-olds in TikTok were trying to make stupid videos, he was making little stories to be printed in articles. And what you just heard was Stardust by Hoagy Carmichael, 1927. And while Jerry Siegel never divulged his favorite song, he did, Clark Kent divulged his favorite song in Superman number 4, or no, Superman number 8. One of the 1940 issues with Superman, not Action Comics. And this here is one of the, I guess the story is that Joe Shuster felt ashamed that the prototype Superman, before the one we knew, didn't do well, didn't get accepted at any big major company, that he threw most of these drawings in the fireplace. And Jerry's like quickly grabbed one, and this is the one that he preserved. This looks like young Jerry Siegel there, and there's Joe Shuster, I guess, rescuing him. So I guess the Superman's kind of like the red blue blur, the blur that he would wear. He would be in the shadows. He wouldn't have superpowers, but it was all prototypes. You had Pulp Fictions of the 1920s and 30s. You had Edgar Rice Burroughs as inspiration. You had H.G. Wells. You had all kinds of inspirations for Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster when they came together through family members that they would put together Superman. And also he created Slam Bradley and Dr. Occult. There's the Adventure Comics. Steve Carson, this is where you get your decoder ring and you join the Federal Men. There's Lois Lane. This is the first time Joe Shuster ever drew Lois Lane. Now, I put an asterisk by Joe Shuster in the title to show that he didn't draw Superman for too long. And I'll get into it when we get to the reason why I'm doing this video. Clark Kent and Superman, one and the same. And I'll show you really quick, because this book we got a genius in intellect, a Hercules in strength, a nemesis to wrongdoers, the Superman. This was the beginning of all of this, of all of it. Now, this is a book that I've had for, I would say, the last 30 years. I think I got this in 94, 93, 94, when I was collecting the Death of Superman and the Reign of the Supermen, plural, because that was the 93 stories. And that was at the time that Joe Shuster had passed away of a heart failure, and Jerry Siegel was not too far behind, as well as Curt Swan. And actually, this is the 30th anniversary of the deaths of Curt Swan and Jerry Siegel. And I recently picked up 2 books that are not new, and they're not too old, but they're collections. And in this book, this is from Action Comics number 1, or Superman number 1, featuring Action Comics number 1. You're getting the best of what Jerry Siegel wrote. Jerry Siegel wrote a Superman that had not been tried. I mean, you had the Phantom, but he was in the jungles. You've had detectives, you had Dick Tracy, you had Tarzan, you had John Carter, but not somebody with these with basically what some people said wish fulfillment. Like you could do anything, and you could smash, you could take down doors, you could. This was your it was your idea, and you got the governor there. You could deflect bullets. At that time in 1938, there was no such fucking thing. Now we take it for granted, like, oh, it's the billionth thing that we see all the time. But this was never done before. Superman went from saving the life of somebody, from being put to the electric chair for wrongful conviction of murder, to going to war. I mean, war, we haven't, this is 1938. I think some people were wise to what Hitler was doing, and we hadn't figured it all out. But Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster, they put Superman at war. This is even just as Captain America. Captain America had started with Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, going to war against Hitler before everyone realized, oh yeah, this guy's a bad guy. But like, there were just so many ideas and concepts that preceded Captain America. This is a guy, it's like, oh, but when will I see you again? Who knows? Perhaps tomorrow, perhaps never. Like, this was a very straightforward, out of fucking nowhere person. This was like a being that was more of a living miracle than it was a guy in a suit. Here, for the first time, they show what Krypton looks like. This is what Krypton looks like. That's Krypton, right? Here, they talk about coal miners' safety, about safety precautions for coal miners. Gambling in football games, performance enhancement drugs, or I can't remember if either was performance enhancement drugs or the mobsters rigging football games. And there are these guys again. Look at that. This was before we had YouTube videos saying, okay, here are these guys, here's what they do. You know, so this was them at their prime. And I liked the presentation of this book. This was 1989. This is the best way to, you go to Felipe's sandwich shop in downtown Los Angeles. Go to Felipe's sandwich shop and take this book with you and just read it. It's like you're in 1940, 1938 all over again. You get those French dip pork sandwiches or beef sandwiches, at the sawdust on the ground, and you just read Superman. and a lot of these kinds of stories, this is the one where he helps out a boxer. I'm not sure this is another mobster rigging boxing games or there's a racket going on. This is the kind of stuff that was repeated in season 1 of The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, which if you wanted to see what Superman was like, if a 1938 Superman was like in a media form, the best way you could do it was watch season 1 of Superman, The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves and Phyllis Coates, and actually I think this is the 75th anniversary of that TV show. Here he gets into the middle of anti-American war plots. They put him before a firing squad. I'll let you figure out what's going to happen there. Look how beautiful these are. This is these little advertisements that are there, not just the stories, but the little advertisements that go along with it. That's just, they kind of, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster kind of encouraged this. They wanted kids to be at their best. That was the way it was. And most of the people that enjoyed this are either too old or dead. They cannot tell you. But hopefully they wrote it down in a journal somewhere, in a diary. If you know a diary of people who like Superman, they wrote it down, please put that diary out there. Here's another humanities story. Basically, there were no villains. There were no major supervillains yet. And he was just helping out people. Just like Chief and the assistance of Superman. He's always like, the dead men are avenged, and so my work is done. That was a simpler time. And these, there's a couple of these in here in which Jerry Siegel took up most of the time writing a story, and you had some Joe Shuster art, but it was Jerry Siegel's writing the whole time. Here you had kids, a kid running away from an abusive orphanage, adults abusing kids, not sexually necessarily, but just beating them up like punching bags. And so Superman stops the abuse. Here's a nice scene. Wow, barely in time. You did it. You saved all those people. Oh, I could kiss you. As a matter of fact, I will. Lady, please. Wow, what a kiss. A super kiss for a Superman. And then she says here, suddenly sweeping Lois off her feet, Superman leaps outward. enough of that. I've got to get you back to safety, where I'll be safe from you. The first time you carried me like this, I was frightened, just as I was frightened of you. But now I love it just as I love you. I like this. I mean, Jerry Siegel knew how to really put character development, but we'll get into the sort of the dumbing down of it. Now here I started to buy the Action Comics editions, and you'll notice this is the Action Comics #1 print and not the Superman 1 print, because the S is not correct. So like the S is not fully seen. It's like yellow. It's yellow S on a yellow shield. And this is the first time they actually did this. So you'll see little color incorrections that they corrected later on in Superman #1. So stuff like that you notice. And we get to these humanitarian stories, and then we get to number 13, which deals with the Ultra Humanite. Here you see him, and this is the second appearance. He goes to the floor. This is his Moriarty. This was like the villain that he had come up with that was very reminiscent of the, what was his name? Bill Dunn, that's right. Bill Dunn. Ernest Smalley was the chemist. That was from the Reign of the Superman, 1933. Here, this is Ultra Humanite taking the form of an actress, a woman, Dolores Winters. So I could remember that character so well. Those evil blazing eyes, there's only one person on this earth who could possess them, Ultra. So this was a very well thought out villain. And the only problem with the Ultra Humanite is that knocked down, sidestepped, overshadowed by Luthor. Not Lex Luthor yet, but I think he was Lex Luthor when the Superboy origin. What sort of creature are you? Just an ordinary man, but with the brain of a super genius, with scientific miracles at my fingertips. I'm preparing to make myself supreme master of the world. That was John Byrne's theory that maybe Ultra Humanite became Luthor. But, you know, he's just another villain that really would cause Superman trouble for the next, 85 years or more. And so a lot of stories. So Luthor would cause problems here. In the next few stories, this one was reprinted a lot for the Superman 50th anniversary, his greatest stories. But I never actually read the first appearance of Luthor until later on. So here you got Luthor with red hair. He wouldn't have bald until later on. But Luthor was distracting Superman. He wanted him to test his feats of strength so he could distract him while he was going after other people. Luthor was doing all kinds of criminal acts, but I guess he became more and more frequent than the Ultra Humanite. So you got the likes of Jack Burnley, Paul Cassidy, Fred Ray. They took over for Joe Shuster, his bad eyesight, and he couldn't keep up with the industry demands that National Comics impressed upon them. So you could tell it's a bit different. They said that Joe Shuster had make sure to put his heads. You know what Joe Shuster's heads look like? They look like, oh my God, look like an old man frowning with little droplets out of his face, right? So you can always tell when you see Joe Shuster's head on a different body. But this was a different artist, and I'm not sure this is 1939. This looks like it could be 1939. Yeah. So this is Joe Shuster's art. This is the complete account of Krypton and the very first time that you see Jor-El and Lara. So this is sort of like before the Superman movie, before the 10th anniversary of Superman in 1948, where they covered it. But here they covered it in great detail. And there were different artists that stepped in for Joe Shuster. But here you could see the comic strips. And I think there was one story. Wait, here's some more of Jerry Siegel's creations. There's the Spectre. Here is a complete story with John Sickela as the artist, Jerry Siegel writing this. This is Luthor with vampire teeth. I like this part where everybody admits to why they want $1 million. I'm an imposter, having a dime in the bank, not even a cent in my pocket. I tricked my way in here past those stupid detectives. What would I do with the $3 million if I had it? I'd exterminate the whole filthy lot of you. I like everybody's like explain their misdeeds, and then Lois at some point at the end of the story, what does she say here? I suggest it was like, free at last of Luthor's threats, thank heaven, but you've got to give us the $3 million you promised. I suggest you millionaires forget about that promise, or I'll reveal on the planet who you are and why you wanted that money. I think we'll be going now. Yes, I think you better. Oh, well. Now, these are some of the last efforts of Jerry Siegel with the prankster. And there's Mixus Bitalik. And this is before the lawsuits. After he came back with there's a toy man there. I do believe that is also Jerry Siegel with the toy man. This is during the war when you had to have nicer villains and not. I think this is the last time, one of the last times that Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel really they signed something that was really nice. Stamp out the job. This is what caused a lot of the the lawsuits. I think the main issue that I had a problem with when I read Volume 2 of Jerry Siegel's Superman was that he was running out of ideas, and his ideas would regurgitate over and over and over and over. I talked about the best of what he could do, but it was an ongoing comic strip kind of adventure. Now, I have an idea of how I would have ended the Golden Age Superman that didn't involve Crisis on Infinite Earths or some big cataclysmic event that would shake DC Comics forever. Because when he goes into public domain, I'll have my own version. But with Jerry Siegel, he never had a plan. Now, you go back to the death of Superman in 1961, that was a whole different thing. Like, oh, he had Lex Luthor kill him. Like, okay, I guess that's what he's doing. So here we have Injustice. What I find, this is done by Tom Taylor, right? I know Tom Taylor has his own political views, but when Tom Taylor did Superman, it was the second coming of a fuck you, I'm Superman, I'm going to change things. Because when Superman came in 1938, he would change the way things would be done, right? Like, he's going to throw you up in the air, he's going to throw you across the way, he's going to drop you and then catch you. He challenged the legal system that was corrupt, and he did it in 1938. Here, you had to have a catalyst. Lois had to be dead. He had to kill Lois by accident and their unborn child. The city that he protected so much had to be blown up. Jimmy Olsen had to die. And so Superman went from being this nice Christopher Reeve type superhero to just be like, I'm going to kill the Joker. I'm going to start controlling and dictating the planet. I'm going to control the White House. So he, in a way, this is like the second coming of Superman in that he did something extreme for different reasons. Okay, if Lois is dead, how would you? I kind of disagree with Grant Morrison, but what would he be like? This was taking risks in, about 75 years later, after 1938, this was taking a risk. And you look at Superman, the Authority, which you have the Ultra Humanite come back, and that was Superman being a teacher, teaching young people, looking at the bad people like Manchester Black, and seeing that people can be redeemed, but they're going to do things. He was a teacher at this point. He was no longer just this guy lifting people over his head and lifting cars and stopping gangsters and throwing down wife beaters. He had evolved. And you see that evolution. You see the evolution of Ultra Humanites. There's no Luthor in this, but there is the Ultra Humanite. And lastly, this is one of my favorite covers. This is Absolute Superman number 17. This is such a nice cyberpunk looking cover. That Aaron, what's his name again? Hold on. Jason Aaron. I don't need to, if you've been reading the Absolute Superman, I don't want to explain what's happened there. By special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family, yeah, you better pay up. Okay, that's how it works. So in conclusion, I will give you a score of what I think of Jerry Siegel's run of Superman. He never wanted to come back for the 1985's final issues or 86, where whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, Alan Moore took over for that job. He had enough. He had killed off Superman and replaced him with Supergirl. He had a hand in the Legion of Superheroes. Would he have ended Superman, or given Superman, would he have told Lois that Superman and Clark Kent are one of the same? What would have happened? How would he have ended it? Would he have kept the Ultra Humanite over Luthor? Because Ultra Humanite was more of this very, like, persistent villain than Luthor. Luthor kind of came in slowly to replace the Ultra Humanite. It wasn't easy. Like, okay, we're going to get rid of the Ultra Humanite, but now we got to have another villain. So we have Luthor. And so Luthor replaced the Ultra Humanite. Um, there's so many different aspects. I would say that the best years were the first couple of years. Once you get to 1941, once you start in that, once you get into the 40s, that's when Jerry Siegel's work started to rot. And Joe Shuster wasn't there to draw anymore. So we're at this point now. Now this is a whole different direction. This is Jason Aaron, an artist, and they're trying to do a new direction. I like what they're doing, and this will start to get stale at some point, and then I'll probably stop collecting. But for now, I like that they're trying to make Lex Luthor evil. Brainiac is a piece of shit. Vandal Savage, Ra's al Ghul guys escaped. There's a lot of things going on in this one. And it also used to be, there was a level of humor to Jerry Siegel's writing where Superman would just fuck with the police and fuck with everybody because they didn't know what he could do. They didn't know that he could have those powers. So because of that, but at some point the humor would go away and Superman would be the serious champion of justice. So let me give my score now. I'm going to give it a 4.8 because I'm turning 48. I do think there are problems with retelling the same kinds of stories over and over again after the first a couple of years. Like, what is Superman now? If I think Jerry Siegel had control of Superman, full control, and it was a book or a series of books, much like Sherlock Holmes, much like Frank L. Baum's Wizard of Oz, I think he would have had an ending for Superman that wasn't about having Luthor kill Superman and having Supergirl take over. And no, Mark Waid, we don't bite the hand that feeds us, okay? That's like telling Sir Arthur Conan Doyle that Sherlock Holmes wasn't always a detective, that he was just a coke addict. I'm like, well, yeah, he had cocaine, but they got rid of that, okay? And yes, Clark Kent used to smoke tobacco pipes, but things change, times change, okay? So 4.8 out of 5. Take a look at it. Now we'll end with a Superman theory. Even though kryptonite was introduced in radio in the 1940s and late 40s in the comic books, I think Jerry Siegel had called it K-metal. Do you think it's possible that this guy, this is Action Comics 25 in 1940, is it possible that Superman got dizzy and sick because this guy wasn't a great hypnotist, but he had a kryptonite jewel in his turban? What do you think? For those of you who are purists of Golden Age, let me know in the comments below.